guys, it's me, Crystal. So, happy Memorial Day and happy May reading wrap-up day and also March TBR day. Okay, so I'm going to go through the books that I did not get to this month for my TBR. And one of them was an ebook, and let me check my notes. It was Camilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This is a vampire story that predates Dracula. I only thought about it a couple times. It's an ebook. I did not get to this. The next books I didn't get to were Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This is a horror. I don't know if it's supernatural horror, but I hope so. And then the other one was Malice by Heather Walter. I still really want to read these books, so depending on how the TBR game goes, I might just roll these over into June, but I didn't get to them. So this next book, I did read a little bit of it, but I'm not quite in the mood for this book for the writing style, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So I'm going to put this back on the shelf for now. I do still want to read it. I just don't want to read it right now. And then another book I still really want to read is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And a part of the problem I was having is that there was a lot of pressure on this book to read it because of the show. And so I gave myself permission to read it as soon as I met the crows that are in the show. And as far as I know, there are only 3 crows in the Shadow and Bone series, and that's Kaz, and Nej, and Jesper. I'm at the moment on chapter 2, so I gave myself permission to go ahead and watch the show. Of course, now I'm watching the comedy show, so we'll see if I'm meant to watch Shadow and Bone after that. Part of me really wants to keep reading this book because it's really interesting, and part of me really wants a break from the Grishaverse for just a month or 2. So hopefully I will feel like picking this up in July. I might change my mind and pick it up towards the end of June. We'll see, but I just think mood-wise, I just want a little break from Grisha stuff. Okay, and then I had 2 DNFs. The first one was The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Her. And I got this book for free, and I thought this was a supernatural horror book. And it was pretty obvious after a while that this was just regular historical fiction. It has a darker tone. I actually liked the atmosphere, but I didn't really like the writing. And I just really didn't want the book that this is. I wanted a horror book. I did not want kind of somber, sad historical fiction. So this is just not for me. And then the next book I DNF'd was The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest. Yeah, I just didn't really care. I liked the prologue, but then after the prologue, I was like, I cared less. Every page, I was like, this is boring to me. So yeah, we're not gonna be reading this. And then I have one book from my TBR that's still in progress, and that is Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan. This is a contemporary book. And there's 2 timelines. The first timeline takes place 5 years before the second half of the book. And so I was in a group with the first half, and then things come to a very dramatic close, and it was very dramatic and very exciting and hilarious. And then all of a sudden we're jerked 5 years, into the future, and I kind of got some whiplash from that and still recovering. And I'm like, I feel like I'm starting over from scratch again. The point of view in this is very omniscient. We're not in everybody's head, but we're in a lot of people's heads, and there's only a few random people whose point of view we're not getting. And I'm just like, why am I in everybody's head? I don't really want to be. It's kind of slowing me down. It's kind of exhausting, but I am liking the story. I'm enjoying the story overall. It's very decadent. The descriptions are very over the top and decadent and lavish and unnecessary, but I do want to finish the book, so I'm going to continue reading this, or I will be rolling this over onto my June TBR. I'm just shy of 200 pages, and I think there's about 350 pages, so hopefully I can get in the groove with the second half and get this finished shortly, but I'm in no hurry. Okay, so now on to the books that I did read. So I'm going to go in order so I don't forget about the audiobook. So the first book I finished in May is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levinseller. this was really, really fun. This is a YA fantasy with a very vague, you know, European-ish setting, you know, maybe 1800s or so. Anyway, if you don't know, it's about this girl, and she wants to seduce the Shadow King, get him to marry her, and then kill him and take his kingdom for herself. But of course, when she gets to the court, her and the Shadow King form a friendship that turns into a little bit more. It was very ridiculous and fun until we get to the very end. And this was a 5-star read for me until the very end. And then it's like, basically we have 97% of this book is like very over the top, very ridiculous, very silly, very fun. And then all of a sudden it takes itself way too seriously, and it turns into a very basic YA fantasy for like 10 pages. And you're thinking, it's only 10 pages. Was it that bad? Yes, it was that bad. Okay, my excitement level went from like a 13 down to like a -9. Okay, and I was so bummed out. I was so bummed out. And even though the ending was wonderful and my excitement crept back up to like a 5, that hard fall just really kind of bummed me out. And I ended up giving this 4 stars, but I did really like it, and I would read it again. I kind of want to read it again. But yeah, I just feel like it's just extremely rude to like all of a sudden take yourself seriously and turn into this basic YA fantasy for, you know, a few pages. It was just unnecessary, and I hated it. And I don't know why she did that. I'm like, did an editor or your agent or somebody tell you to do that nonsense? Because I disagree. It was not necessary. Even though I knew it was coming, because like there was like this, what do you call it, this last like bottle or whatever that needed to fall, and it fell. But like all the other pins that fell, you know, they were treated in the same kind of ridiculous fashion as the rest of the book. And then all of a sudden this one was taken seriously. I don't know. I didn't appreciate that. But I did really like this book outside of like those like 7 to 10 pages. And the next book I finished was my audiobook, and this was Nerve by Gian Ryan. This is a YA thriller, and it's about just this basic, smart, you know, scrawny teenage girl who starts to play this dare game. And if you've seen the movie, which I've seen the movie, the book is quite a bit different from the movie. The dares are way different. The characterization is, I'm not gonna say it's way different, but it's more exciting. But I thought that the dares and the characters' personalities and things worked for the book. I just think the movie was better. I gave this 3 stars. I mean, I thought it was fun. It was definitely very silly, very melodramatic and a little angsty, but I thought it was really fun. Pretty much the main problem I had with this book was the romance. And so it's like the main character meets this guy when she starts doing dares, and I was so sure that Ian had some kind of secret, and that his secret would come out and like crap would hit the fan and it would be really exciting. And I mean, mild spoiler alert or whatever, but like it turns out Ian actually really is into our main character, and I just didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. I didn't for 1 second believe that he was really into her, because it was just all of a sudden, it's like they do this dare and then like they just started hanging out, right? And then all of a sudden he's like, oh my gosh, I like you so much. And he's like kissing all over her. And I'm just like, where did this come from? Is he being paid to do this? Is this a dare? Are they like giving him extra money on the side to mess with this girl? That's what I was hoping, because that would have been hilarious and funny and way more entertaining than him actually being into her for real. It was just, I don't know. It was just really unrealistic. I didn't find the dare game itself to be unrealistic. It was just, there's something about the way it was operating that didn't really feel real. And it was just, it was fine. It was fine. It was fun. It was fine. Okay, the next book I finished was Points for the End of the World by Katie Weismer. It was fine. I didn't like this one as much as her other poetry book that's out, which I read last month, which is The Sweetest Kind of Poison. So basically, I didn't find this as organized or as cohesive as the other poetry book. The other poetry book was split into these sections, and each section, you know, felt like a different part of her, like, going through this narrative that she was telling. And while I don't have a problem at all with a bunch of random poems being thrown together, I think the problem I was having is that she tried to organize this book, and so like she has like these titled sections, and but the I don't know, there was just no the poems didn't feel organized. It felt like just a bunch of random poetry that she split up into 5 sections. And I think if she hadn't tried to split them up into sections, then we could just like go with the random flow. But instead, because she had sections and because I had read the other poetry book, I was expecting some kind of cohesiveness, and it was just super random, which is fine. But I guess since the sections were implying that there was some kind of organization, then my expectation was that this would be organized, and the reality was it was not organized. So I think that affected how I felt about them. Also, just like her other poetry book, everything is left aligned, which is fine. It's just, you know, I read a lot of poetry books, and I'm not used to, you know, everything being so, you know, plain, I guess. I'm used to, you know, something being different. Like I said, something being centered, a line being broken. They're being, you know, playing with the format some, because that's part of the fun of poetry, but it's fun. The next book I finished is House of Hollow by Sutherland, and this is a YA paranormal. And it's about these sisters, and they went missing for a month, and they were children, and they came back strange. And this is really atmospheric. I really loved the writing. It was a really fun read. It was very enjoyable. It was very interesting. Like, overall, I had a really good experience with this book. I gave it 3 stars though, because basically the problem I had is that I figured out 97% of the plot in chapter 1. And part of it is because I read a lot of paranormal. Paranormal was like my jam for a really long time. And there are certain ways that people describe things in paranormal books that are like hints and like breadcrumbs of like things to come. And because this author used some of those things, which is fine, I was like, oh, is this what's going on? And so then as I was reading the book, you know, everything was just confirming, you know, my suspicions that I came to in chapter 1. Like I said, 97% of the plot. Chapter 1. There was one thing I didn't get. I really should have, because I feel like I really should have. I feel like it was really obvious. Maybe it wasn't that obvious, and maybe that's why I didn't figure it out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This was really fun. It just wasn't satisfying. Okay, the next book I read was In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a memoir about this woman who finds herself in a increasingly abusive relationship. So the nature of the abuse is verbal and emotional, and I gave this 2 stars. So let me try to explain why I gave this 2 stars. I feel like the subject matter is important. You know, I think, you know, people who are in abusive relationships, they need to talk about it. And sometimes people, when you are in an abusive relationship that's not physically abusive, then people feel like sometimes maybe they shouldn't say anything because other people don't care, because you don't have physical bruises that people can see. But it's like, you know, every kind of abuse is damaging, and so it definitely needs to be talked about. However, you still, when you're writing a book, you still need to talk about it in a way that is clear and engaging and interesting. And this was very pretentious. It was very boring. I feel like a lot of these essays, the author was trying to like wax philosophical by talking about old movies and, you know, old TV shows, and trying to talk about an episode of I Love Lucy or something from Star Trek, and like bring it into like this bigger picture that she was painting, and it just wasn't working. Also, I really hate to say this, but like, this was not well written. It wasn't well written. I didn't feel her pain. You know, I didn't really understand even the nature of their relationship, because this is what was going on. Okay, she is in an abusive relationship with this woman. The relationship is long distance. So that means she is making an active effort to stay in this abusive relationship. And I feel like she tried a couple of times to dive into her past, to try to explain why she was so stupid and pathetic, you know, and willing to stay with this woman who was verbally and, you know, emotionally abusing her. But she just didn't do a good job. And it was just really clumsy. It was this really clumsily told memoir about this stupid, desperate, horny woman. And it was not interesting, and I wanted to DNF it pretty much the entire time. And I wish I had, but I wanted to see her have some agency. I wanted to see her like find some strength. I wanted to see her get out of the situation, and she didn't even get herself out of the situation. The woman broke up with her, then wanted to get back together. She's stupid. So she gets back together with this woman. I'm like, do you even like each other? It doesn't even seem like they had any kind of like real emotional connection. It was just like, it was just lust. It was just like she was horny for this woman, and it was just like completely screwing up her perception and her brain, and she couldn't think straight. And maybe I just can't relate. I don't know. But I'm just like, it was really frustrating. And I mainly felt bad for her friends who had to watch her do this, because I've been in that situation watching a friend, you know, be mistreated by someone you just really want to smack them. But that's not going to help. So you're like, I'm trying to be here for you, but oh my God. So I just wish it was better told. I wish she had like put us in her shoes so that we could really understand what it was about this woman that she liked besides her body. And she didn't do that. It didn't seem like they had a real relationship or anything, you know? And then like after she gets back into a relationship with this woman, the woman breaks up with her again. And then finally, when the woman wants to get back together again, with the help of a friend, she finally, you know, has some kind of a backbone long enough to break whatever cord is tethering her to this woman. And I'm just like, it was just really frustrating. And I just wish it was better written. But hopefully maybe we can get more stories like this from people who aren't trying so hard with their writing. Okay, and the last book I read is the only book that got 5 stars this month, and that is A Game of Thrones, the graphic novel, volume 3. And so I left my bookmark in the place of the art that I wanted to show you, because if you're familiar with the show, then you know who this character is. So first of all, I want to show you the artwork because it is fantastic. Also, that is Peter Baelish, also known as Littlefinger, also known as one of the largest douchebags in the world filled with douchebags. So yeah, this was really good. I think I gave volume 1 5 stars, volume 2 3 stars, and then volume 3 5 stars again. So I'm really enjoying these. I almost hate this. I kind of understand Cersei. I kind of understand where she's coming from. And I hate to say this because Cersei is the worst. But I kind of understand where she's coming from. I kind of hate her a little bit less than I did before. And I really, really hate that. But George R. R. Martin's just like a really good writer. And I think they're doing a really good job with the adaptation. I have not read the novel. I'm not really planning on reading the novel, which is why I picked up the graphic novel. Because novel, you know, it's pretty dense. And these are also very dense. But I think the work they're putting into this is really paying off. And I think they're doing a good job. So, yeah. So, obviously, this was my favorite read for May because it was the only book that wasn't disappointing or, you know, frustrating in some way. But if for some reason you don't know what Game of Thrones is about, it's a fantasy book. It's dark fantasy about a bunch of people who are terrible. Except for Ned. And we all know what happens to good guys. Good guys are good to a fault, and they get everybody killed and themselves killed, and they ruin a lot of lives. And I'm like, you can't do something a little shady just once for a good reason. Like, you can do something shady for a good cause, you know, but instead, no, he's just trying to always do the right thing. And we love Ned, but he's dumb. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the TBR portion, and I'm going to try to figure out how to do this. So I'm going to get my board, which is sitting back there, and we're going to talk about what is on the board. And yeah, it's going to be super fun. I'm super excited. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm playing a Monopoly-like game, and I got the idea from, I think the name of the channel is Steph Loves. I will link the video I watched below. It's the only video I watched on that channel, and I think it is from February. So that is the game that I'm copying. Okay, but the reason I decided to change up the way I'm doing my TBRs is because I watched this video, and I think the name of her game is Deck of TBR, and I will link that video below just because I think it's really fun. And if you want to play a game with your TBR, I think these are really interesting games to play. And she like assigns a prompt to like every single suit in a deck of cards. And I was going back and forth between trying to do something like that and trying to do something like this Monopoly board. But the Monopoly board worked better with the number of prompts that I had. So, yeah. So it was supposed to be a little bit bigger, but the poster board was not the size that it needed to be. And so instead of it being 11 by 11, it's like 10.5 by 10.5, which is not a big deal. But it really bothers me when somebody says something is, you know, 11 inches and it's like 10 points, you know, 7/8 or something. That really bothers me anyway. So this is my Monopoly board. I'm calling it the Reading Hour Monopoly Fanfiction. The title is kind of inspired by The Haunting Hour by R.L. Stine, who is an author that was like a favorite of mine when I was a child, and also The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. And I consider that to be one of my favorite books that I've ever read. I'm currently rereading the book via audiobook, and so far I really, really love it. So hopefully I will still love it, and it will still be one of my favorite books of all time. But I first read it when I was in high school, so we'll see. But anyway, that's why it's called The Reading Hour. I have a list of rules on the back and some guidelines, which I'll read to you. Okay, so basically this is going to work like a Monopoly board. I have assigned prompts to everything on your typical Monopoly square, including a community chest and a chance section that I have renamed novellas and anthologies and intimidating books. So I will have cards with my intimidating books on them and cards with my novellas and anthologies. So basically the rules are pretty simple. I have 3 rules. One of them is if I roll a double, I can earn a free spin or a get out of jail free card, which is basically will allow me to roll again if I land on the prompt that I'm super not in the mood for, or I can change books. So I can change books either by, like if I land on contemporary and I'm like, oh, I'm really not in the mood for another contemporary book right now, then I can just pick another genre. Or if I pick a book out of a TBR jar and I'm like, don't want to read this right now, I can pick another book. Okay, otherwise I'm going to try, you know, to let the game dictate what I read. So then the second rule is I must pick an ebook for one of the prompts, but right now I'm going to limit that to a max of 2 ebooks just because I'm not reading the ebook super fast right now, but it could be because the ebook I'm currently reading is a contemporary book. But anyway, anything over 2, I will just pick another book. And then I have to pick a graphic novel. I have a handful of unread graphic novels. I would like to continue getting through my graphic novel TBR. So every single month, I want to have at least 1 graphic novel on my TBR. I can have more, of course. Okay. So then I have like 5 like little guidelines here, and one of them is there's a max of 1 intimidating book card. So that means even if I land on chance 5 times, which is this, I'm only picking 1 of these cards. If I have too many intimidating books in my TBR, I'm not going to have fun. The whole point of this is to help me get through my TBR in a way that is fun and also gives me some variety and also, you know, gives me some flexibility in what I'm reading and whatever. Okay, the second kind of guideline is there's a max of 2 community chest cards. So that's the novellas and anthologies. We do not want a TBR filled with novellas and anthologies. So, and also I don't have a ton of unread novellas and anthologies. So this is also, you know, making sure that we don't read all of them in 1 month or something. And then one of these squares is reread. So this is optional because on the Monopoly board, this is the just visiting part of the jail section of the board. So if I don't want to reread anything, then I don't have to. I can just pick a wild card to put in its place, or I can just sit here and roll again. Okay, the other guideline is I can choose a wild card for recent buy. So I have a section on the board that's a recent buy. If I can't, you know, like if I don't feel like, you know, using up brain energy to try to settle on a recent buy to read, I can just draw a book out of my wild card jar, which is basically every single book that's on my TBR that's not in another jar. Although some of the books that are in another jar are also in the wild card jar. But anyway, so the last guideline is I can limit any category to 0 books or a max of 2 books. And this is, because like right now I have like a invisible like threshold for YA books. And so it's like some years I can read like 15 YA books before all the characters start getting on my nerves. And some years I can only read like 7. I think it depends on the book. You know, the books that I'm reading. So basically I'm giving myself permission that if I pick a YA book and I know that, like, for example, in June, I don't want any YA books on my TBR because I can feel that I've like reached that invisible threshold and it needs to be reset. And so usually I can just take a month or 2 and it will reset it on its own and I'm totally fine. And then I can read maybe 15 more YA books before I'm annoyed again. So if I pick a YA book out of a TBR jar, it's going back in the jar. I'm going to pick something else. Or if I feel like I'm landing on something too many times. So if I feel like I land on classics, you know, if I land on classics 3 times, then I reserve the right to limit any category. Like if I only want 1 classic book on my TBR, I can, no matter how many times I land on classics. Or if I feel like I can handle 2 classic books but not 3, then I can limit it to 2. Like I said, R1, R0, my prerogative, reader's prerogative based on my mood. And the second part of this last section is I can choose a wild card in its place. So if I land on classics for a 3rd time and I'm like, okay, I don't want any more classics, but I can't think of a book that I want to put in its place, and I'll just pick a book out of the wild card jar. Okay, so next I'm going to go over the board and show you what I put on here. Let me try to figure out how to film this. And yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, so I think I have a setup that is adequate. But before I do that, just a couple quick things. There are no punishments in this game. So I don't get a punishment for landing on a certain square. too many times. There are no punishments if I don't read all the books on my TBR. I put more books than I typically read in a month on my TBR on purpose, and that is so I have plenty to choose from. But anyway, yes, there are no punishments or anything. This game is for fun, a fun, stress-free way to settle on a TBR every month. So let me try to film the overview of the board, and then I will try to figure out how to roll the dice and then move around the board, and we'll pick some things. Okay, so I'm going to try this angle. Hopefully the camera's not wobbly too much, but this is the only time I will be doing this overview like this. So just like a regular Monopoly board, we're going to start on go. And this is also the wild card square. So I don't pick a wild card every time I pass go. This is only if I land on this square. Also, I need to not tap this or it's going to slide down. Okay, anyway. So in this purple property, I put classics, and then just like in a regular Monopoly board, there are 3 community chest spots, are novellas and anthologies, and there are 3 intimidating book slots. So I'm hoping that if they're on here multiple times, then I will definitely land on it because I want to make sure I get an intimidating book on every single month's TBR, and I get a novel or an anthology on every single month's TBR. So hopefully having 3 of these squares and 3 of these squares, that ups the likelihood that I will land on it at least once. Okay, so after our classics, we have, this is income tax. And so for income tax, I put nonfiction. Do you get it? Nonfiction, real life, income tax, real life. Okay. So then for reading the railroad, I put middle grade. Again, I did that on purpose because I thought it was funny. And then for this blue property, I have priority reads. This is a book that I said I wanted to read this year, and I will just pick a random book out of a TBR jar. It's the same with the classics. All my classics are in a jar. All my priority reads are in a jar. So this is the gel / just visiting. And so on this, if I land on this, I can either pick a book to reread, or I can just ignore this square, or I can pick a wild card. It's reader's choice. But like I've already mentioned, I am currently rereading the book. So if I land on this, I will just use the audiobook that I'm listening to, which is The Witching Hour by Anne Rice, as the reread fulfillment for that square. Okay, now moving on to this section, which if you know, then you know. But if you don't know, this property here and these squares here are the most landed on squares on the Monopoly board. So for these, I wanted to put something that I wanted to make sure I get. I want to make sure I get a book from one of these categories every single time, just because I have a lot of books that are in these categories. And so for this, what is typically violet, purple property, I have a retelling. And then for electric company, I have popular book. Now this is popular book based on the booktube circles that I'm in. These are books that I have heard a lot of people talk about in the videos that I watch. And then for suspense, which I think is short line, I was thinking about the book / movie Midnight on the Orient Express for some reason. And so I put the suspense category here. And then this orange property right here, I put recent buy. And again, like I said, if for some reason I can't settle on the book, I will just pick one out of the wild card jar because a lot of those books are recent buys anyway. And then in free parking here, we have poetry, because I thought free parking is relaxing. Poetry is maybe relaxing. And then this is typically yellow, but I really wanted to use this color, so I decided to use this color here. And so this is a book that's been on my TBR for 5 or more years. I also put books that have been on my TBR for 4.5 years. And that's just because some of these books will age up as the year goes on. And also I wanted to get a little more longevity out of my jars before I have to redo them. And so any book that's been on my shelf for that's been on my TBR for at least 4 years is in this category. And then for B&O Railroad, I picked historical fiction for some reason. And then for this red property, I picked graphic novel. And then for Waterworks, the water company, I picked contemporary because if any prompt is going to make me feel like crying, it's a contemporary book. And then in Go to Jail, this is my favorite one. I have a possible DNF. So I have a list of books that I've been putting off reading because I don't think I'm going to enjoy them. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to finish them. And so if I land on this, I thought it was really funny. if you DNF a book, you go to jail. So there's that. I really hope I land on that too. And then for this last stretch, the green property, I have a book in this series because I have quite a few books in the series and would like to encourage myself to get through them. And then for, what is this? Pennsylvania Railroad, I put horror. I guess I was thinking because Pennsylvania is close to the East Coast and Stephen King lives in Maine and Maine is on the East Coast. And so that's why I put that there. And then for the expensive blue property, we have one word title because I thought that would be really fun. And mathematically speaking, you're less likely to land on this property. So I wanted to put something fun here, although I, mathematically speaking, tend to land on this property a lot. But anyway, and then for luxury tax, I picked sign books because I thought that was hilarious. Okay, so for my avatar, Steph uses a magnetic bookmark, so I'm going to use a magnetic bookmark because why not? And this is Dumbledore. And then here I have my cards. So I made these different colors in case for some reason they get shuffled into the deck. I can easily find them. But I have my free spin with the rose stamp that I'm using for my chance cards. And then my, is this upside down? My get out of jail free. And then for my community chest cards, which I use a crown stamp for, I also have a free spin and a get out of jail free card. So I will get these on the board. I'll figure out how to film this. And I think I'm going to pick 9 books because I have that book that I'm already rolling over, which is Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan. So I think I'm going to pick 9 books. So let's play this game. And I did laminate these to make them easier for me to shuffle. And yeah, it was tedious, but it's worth it. So I have these dice that I thought were pretty. So let's do roll number 1 of 9. What was that, a 7? Oh boy, right off the gate, I get to pick a card. Okay. So this is the only one I have to do, Inferno by Dan Brown. Of course, book that. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's fine. All right, roll number 2. What is that, 6? Okay, so I landed on retelling. So I'm actually just going to write that down, and then I will draw out of the TBR jars when I'm done. Okay, so spin number 3 is a 6. I get a recent buy. I'll figure out how to do this better later. Probably should have practiced ahead of time, but that's not how I roll. Okay, roll number 4 is an 8. Graphic novel. Okay, roll number 5 is 4. Book in the series, of course. Okay, roll number 6 is 9. Wild card. Okay, roll number 7, 6. Priority read. Okay, roll number 8 is 5. Another retelling. Okay, and roll number 9 is 12. Oh boy. Yes. A book I've had on my TBR for a while. Did not get one of those, but that's okay. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too much of a mess. For the first spin, we got Inferno by Dan Brown. So I will get that off the shelf when I'm done picking everything else, and then we'll talk about everything. Okay, so for the second prompt, I got retelling. So since I got this one twice, for this first one, I'm going to go ahead and roll over Malice by Heather Walter, because I still really want to read this book right now. So, and next I have a recent buy. So for that one, I'm going to pick Near the Bone by Christina Henry and go ahead and roll this over because I'm still super in the mood to read this book. Okay, and then next I have a graphic novel, and for that I'm going to go ahead and pick up volume 4 of A Game of Thrones. So I will go and grab that off the shelf. So for prompt 5, I got a book in a series. Instead of picking a prompt out of a jar, I actually already have a book in mind that I want to read right now. So I will pick that book off the shelf, which is Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes. So for number 6, I landed on Wild Card. So here's my Wild Card jar. Yeah, this is ridiculous. Just how many books are on my TBR. I'm really looking forward to seeing this jar empty out. So let's pick a prompt from this. I know it's overflowing, so I'm just gonna kind of pick one in the middle. And unless this is a YA book, this is the one I'm going with. This is a YA book. I do want to read this book, but I do also really need a break from YA for like a month, maybe 2. So let's pick another one out. You know, let's honor the kind of mood I'm in right now and not, what is this? What is this? The space between us. Let me see if I can find that book. Okay, so for 7, I got a priority read. So these are the books that I have left on my priority list. I have read a couple books off of it already. So let's pick this one. Oh, that's YA. I really need to read that book though. Oh well, we're gonna put that back. I got Queen of Ruin by Tracy Banghart. I really want to read it and I need to read it. This is difficult. Again, I'm trying to honor the mood that I'm in. So let's put that back and let's pick another one. You know, I'm trying not to aggravate myself. A Treasury of Great American Scandals by Michael Farquhar. That is nonfiction. Okay, and then for prompt 8, I got a retelling. So I'm going to pick a retelling out of the jar. Very high likelihood that this is also going to be a YA book, but we'll see. What is this? Oh, this is an anthology. Cursed. And I don't think it's a YA anthology. I don't have it in the YA section, so that'll work. And so then the last prompt that I rolled for was a book that's been on the shelf forever. So these are those books. There's quite a few in here as well. Let's pick this one. That's not the one I was reaching for, but that's okay. That's YA. Okay. Let's pick another one. That's also YA. Also, why is that book? No, that's not YA. Oh no. Oh my gosh, I gotta get that out. I thought it was YA because it just says Heartless and it's an ebook, and I have a physical copy of Heartless by Marissa Meyer, but I also have an ebook because I picked it up when it was on sale, and then forgot and then bought a physical copy, and then I was like, that's fine. So, but this is, I think this is a new adult. Yeah, I picked this up at a writing conference. This is an indie published book, and this is also an ebook, and I forgot to pick an ebook, and I was supposed to. So this is perfect for that. Yeah, I've had that book for a while. So I'm actually going to have to look that book up because I don't remember the author's name. But anyway, let me get all the books that are on my TBR together, and let's talk about them. Okay, I'm back. So I literally had to go to my spreadsheet with all my books on it to find this book because I had no idea what this was. I probably should have put poetry on there, but I guess I thought I would know, and I've not had this book that long either. But anyway, so these are the books on my June TBR. These are the physical books. All right, so first up we have Heartless. This is by Kelly Martin. I think this is a new adult paranormal. I think the girl is in college. All I can remember about this book is that she's having some kind of nightmares, and I think something from her nightmares is like seeping into the real world, or she's having a nightmare about something and it turns out this person really exists. It's something along that nature. And when I met her at the writing conference, like it sounded like super amazing. And I've had this book because that writing conference was in 2017. Yeah, so I've had that book right around 4 years. So yeah, it's time for me to read that. And so then I'm rolling over Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan, adult contemporary book. I'm also rolling over Near to Bone by Christina Henry, adult horror, hopefully supernatural horror, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm really excited. And then also rolling over this, Malice by Heather Walter, an adult Sleeping Beauty retelling. So then I have The Space Between Us by Courtney Peppernell and Zach Gray, which is a poetry book, which is perfect because I don't have a poetry book on this month's TBR, and I feel like I should always have one until I run out of unread poetry books, but anyway. And then I have Inferno by Dan Brown. I bought this book when it came out. I bought this at the used bookstore that is no longer open. And according to the copyright pages, it came out in 2013. Have I had this book for 7 years? Oh my gosh. So let's see if I can get this book read. I have not read a Dan Brown book, except for this picture book, which I loved. It's Wild Symphony. So good. So this would be interesting because I've not been able to talk myself into reading this book in what looks like 8 years since I've had it. I don't know what month this book came out, but it's been out at least 7.5 years. And I don't know what it's about. I just know it's a thriller. Yeah, I do not remember. I mean, it's Inferno, so I know it has something to do with Dante's Inferno, which is something that I had to read a lot as a literature major, so it did grow on me after, you know, like the 3rd time I had to read it. So, oh no, I'm not dreading it too much. Okay, and then we have A Treasury of Great American Scandals by Michael Farquhar, and A Treasury of World Scandals was one of my favorite books of last year. So the tagline says, tantalizing true tales of historic misbehavior by the founding fathers and others who let freedom swing. I don't particularly like history, but I do like history when there are scandals involved, and I do like scandals and scandalous things in books, so this should be really fun. And then I have Cursed, and this is an anthology. So I get to knock one of these off the TBR, so that's good. And it has stories by Neil Gaiman, Charlie Jane Anders, M.R. Carey, Christina Henry, and many more. So Christina Henry and Neil Gaiman are the reason why I picked this book up. So I really like fairy tale retellings, and I like anthologies. So this should be really fun. It says, a wish is a terrible thing. And then I have Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes, and this is book 2 in the Used series, and I really want to read this, so this should be fun. If you don't know what Used is about this guy who is stalking this grad student. I think she's an MFA student, but anyway, Joe is twisted, but you kind of like him anyway. And then the last book on the TBR is A Game of Thrones Volume 4 by George R.R. Martin and team. It's adapted by Daniel Abraham, and the art is by Tommy Patterson. And there's a whole team of people involved, but I started reading these last year. And so it's like, finish reading these, Krystal. I already showed you the artwork, but why not show you another page? I'm excited. Also, before I forget, let's go over the reading journal. So I decided to put one of my favorite book quotes from last month and what used to be the theme part of the reading journal. And so it's, when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And June's aesthetic theme is cathedrals. So of course, for the title page, I picked the bridge. We love to make sense. Anyway, this is my TBR page, which I will fill out when I'm done filming. And then these are my reading wrap-up pages. Cathedral. Also, behind all this fog, I think that's a cathedral. And then for my favorite read of the month, maybe some kind of cathedral. Also, I have to say, out of all the months, this is probably the most inconsistent color scheme-wise. I don't know. Okay, so that's all for this video. And let me know if you've read any of the books that I read in May. And if you've read any of the books that I've read in June and what you thought about them. And do you have any books on your TBR that you're like super excited about? Do you have any books coming up that you're super excited to read? And also, if you want to watch a fun TBR game, I will link the Steph Loves Bookopoly game in the description box. I don't know who came up with the Bookopoly board, but that is a video I watch. And then I'll also link, I want to say the name of her channel is Becca Books and Bujo. And I will also link her Decade TBR video because I just thought that that looked like it was really fun. And if I had that many prompts, then maybe I would be doing that game. But I think this Monopoly board game is going to be really fun. Kind of chaotic, but we'll get used to it. And yeah, just do something a little different anyway. So I will see you guys next week. I hope you had a good May. I hope your June is great. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.